And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink podcast. My name is Brenden. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We're talking NFC West on our division preview series as it continues to roll on. And today, I am joined by @EliteTakes_. He goes by Nico. He's one of my favorite follows on Twitter and social media. It's TikTok, Instagram. He's an up-and-coming name in this business. Nico, how are things?
Doing great. I appreciate the intro.
Yeah, man. You're. I found you on TikTok I think it was last year, and
really?
you're an awesome follow that I found you on Twitter, and I've loved your takes. You're an insightful guy. It's a pleasure to kind of see someone as young as you have as good as takes as you, I guess.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I've just been really studying the NFL in and out since freshman year, really, with COVID when I had so much downtime, and we're still going. So yeah.
And you're off to Texas A&M in a couple days.
Yes, sir.
That's exciting stuff. What do you think about their football team this year? Do you have tickets to any games? You plan on going?
Oh yeah. I got the sports pass, so I've got the tickets to all the home games. They just got ranked, I think, 19th in the preseason poll. So I think an 8-4, 9-3-ish season would be really nice in year one for Mike Elko. So yeah.
Yeah. There we go. All right. Let's talk some NFC West, Nico. So
Great.
We're going to start with the San Francisco 49ers. And before we kind of get into the team and before we kind of get an outlook, let's talk Brenden Ayuk here, because this is the biggest topic of conversation in the NFL.
Oh my gosh.
It is the most annoying storyline ever.
Oh, 100%.
As a news editor, we were going through the articles we've written at The Score where I work, and we've written 16 Brenden Ayuk articles since the beginning of June. It's getting annoying. Everything he says is newsworthy. Everything that happens is newsworthy. So I'm just going to pass the ball off to you and just get your take on this whole situation. What do you think the 49ers should do? Where do you think this all ends up? How are you feeling about Brenden Ayuk on the trade block, I guess, right now?
I mean, I think, every time we see one of these, 1,200 up above receivers going onto the trade market, like the DJ Moores and the AJ Browns, I'm mixing my guys up. I just really feel like every time a team trades them away, it ends up coming back to bite them. I think we look at the Titans and we look at the Panthers, and I think we say that even though they both got, really legit value, like in the first round, it did not end up paying off for them. So I think the 49ers would really regret trading Brenden Ayuk. I think if anything, their plan should be to kind of pay him, ride it out with Debo, move on from Debo maybe next offseason. They've got complementary pieces. Jennings, I'm a big fan of Ricky Pearsall. And come on, man, you've got Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. It is truly a very loaded group.
Yeah.
So I think but a lot of those guys are older in their primes, and Brenden Ayuk is someone that you want around for the next decade. So I think it's really a no-brainer for the 49ers to pay him. And from what I've seen, he hasn't asked for anything too unreasonable. I think I've heard the number is $28 million, not even in the same territory as the Justin Jeffersons and CeeDee Lambs of the world. So yeah, I absolutely think that the 49ers should do everything in their power. And even just working out a pay raise for this season, if that can just keep him happy and get to more discussions next offseason. And I think that ultimately is what will happen as we get to, we're officially less than a month until kickoff. The more time that passes, the less practical it gets for a team to really acquire him and get him worked into their offense. So ultimately, I do think that there's going to be a resolution, and I think the smoke has reached its highest in terms of him leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you asked me a week ago, I probably would have said I think he's a Pittsburgh Steeler because there was all the smoke about it. A.K. Ricky from Twitter is one of my favorite follows right now, breaking news. But yeah, we're at August 11th right now, August 12th. Teams, like you said, are kicking off in under 4 weeks. And it would be so unprecedented for a guy like him to move on to another team from a team that's contending and wants to win a Super Bowl right now. Their window is right now. There might not be another version of this San Francisco 49ers. This is their best shot, arguably, at winning. Maybe last year, their numbers were insane last year, which we'll get into. But I think ultimately they end up signing him to a long-term extension, or they have some sort of 1 year kind of handshake deal where you play here. We won't franchise tag you if you go to the open market and you find a contract. Let us match it. There's going to be some sort of handshake deal here. But yeah, I think he ultimately stays in. If he doesn't, to me, it's just like the ultimate franchise like blunder here, because you're admitting you're admitting that you screwed up the wide receiver market. You're admitting that you couldn't hold on to a player that you drafted and you brought up to be, in my opinion, a top 7 receiver at minimum. I think Brenden Ayuk is really, really damn good. He's like one of the best playmakers in the league. So I don't. This whole situation baffles me, and I really hope it comes to an end soon because it's driving me nuts.
Absolutely, and it's really been refreshing, honestly, the last 2 days or so to not see any Brenden Ayuk talking. And just all the preseason talk. Really, preseason action was much needed after that whole week of like report after report.
You got reporters reporting about nothing now. It's like they feel obligated to jump in with a tweet saying that there's no news, basically. Like we're at that kind of stuff. There's a lot of, it's like the definition of silly season with Brenden Ayuk. Okay, so let's dive into the San Francisco 49ers team.
Sure.
Last year they finished second in team DVOA, first in offensive DVOA, fourth in defensive DVOA. They were the 8th best DVOA team since 1979. They had a historic season. And this conversation for the offense is going to be hard because I'm going to act like Brenden Ayuk's on the team, right? Like that's part of this issue here. Like we don't know if he's going to be there or not. So it's kind of hard to dissect this offense. But my big question for you, and we're going to the quarterback here, it's going to be pretty generic. Who is the real Brock Purdy? Where are you on Brock Purdy heading into this year? And do you think that he can keep up and continue to help this version of the offense?
I would consider myself a Brock Purdy truther at this point. I think like people just really want to group him in with Tua and Goff, these super scheme-dependent passers, guys who aren't able to push the ball downfield. But I think what people don't understand about Brock Purdy and what makes him different from those guys is his playmaking ability. Like we saw it come through plenty of times for the 49ers down the stretch. And for me, like, can you make plays when the pocket breaks down? That's a big thing that separates quarterbacks for me. I'm a big believer in Purdy. I think he's found an amazing rhythm within the system. It got a little sloppy at some points. You know, teams were getting him with the dropping linebackers at times, but I don't know, man. I think he had a really phenomenal season, and I think he made many less mistakes down the stretch. You know, I always think about that Jacksonville game where he rolled out to the left and threw the ball right back into the middle, and it was just like this horrible decision, but Brenden Ayuk somehow caught it for a touchdown, and then Kyle Shanahan went into the press conference and said, I told him to never, ever do that again. I think that he is only going to mature from here. And despite the lack of arm talent, I think he's got basically everything else you're asking for. So I have full confidence that he can be consistent, and I think he can play at a top 10 level. And I think that he can continue to lead one of the best offenses in the game.
His efficiency stats are insane if you look at the past 2 years. Like, I've never seen a quarterback that the eye test. Like I will get into my opinion on Brock Purdy, but like I don't think he's this good. Like if you look at 25 quarterbacks,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, so I will not debate that at all.
Yeah. So 25 quarterbacks have taken at least 730 snaps. Here's where he ranks in efficiency stats. EPA per play first. He has 0.078 more than Patrick Mahomes, which is number 2. First in success rate, third in completion percentage, second in completion percentage above expectation, and 12th in air yards, which is pretty good considering like he gets a lot of dink and dunk kind of label to him, but he's not. He's pushing the ball down the field, like above average more than everyone in the NFL. So like those stats, like if you're Brock Purdy's agent, you're going into a negotiation next year. You're going, look at this. Look at Brenden Deek's podcast notes right here. This is what it says. Here's what it says on paper. I deserve the most money. Like it's pretty wild to look how good he's been since he's taken over the starting job.
Absolutely. And I think like that really is where I stand with him. I think that to me, Brock Purdy has shown me that he is worth paying. He is not worth playing around with if you're the 49ers. He is the best quarterback Kyle Shanahan has had in San Francisco by a considerable margin. So yeah, that's basically where I stand. I don't think he's what the efficiency stats god says he is, you know?
Yeah. So if you look at like just what he's able to do under Kyle Shanahan, so he has 7.3 average depth per target on completions last year. That was 3rd in the NFL. That was the highest that Kyle Shanahan's had since 2016. So going back to your point of just like he makes Kyle Shanahan's offense work. It's almost like if there was to be a quarterback that Shanahan could have in the 7th round or later on where they had to figure out the Trey Lance saga because they traded 3 first-round picks. They had to find someone for cheap for pennies on the dollar, and that's what they did with Brock Purdy. They literally took him with the last pick in the draft, and they nail this down. So like he just makes Kyle Shanahan's offense work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so can he continue this? Let's take a look at this offense, because I think I'll ask you this. Do you think it's the best weapons in the league? I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Miami's the only team in the conversation right now. And, you know, they have Jonnu Smith compared to George Kittle. So, yeah, that's where it separates.
Yeah, like they got Brenden Ayuk, you've got Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and they made some luxury picks this year. I'm going to call them luxury picks because I do think they could have maybe invested in the offensive line, but Ricky Pearsall, Isaac Guerrero, Jacob Cowing, it's almost like Kyle Shanahan kind of in the John Lynch in the front office said we need more speed here, because those were the first 3 picks that they had, and I think 3 of the top 5 picks that they had in this draft.
Yeah, they really just took the best player available approach in all facets, and I can't even really say any of their picks are gonna considerably fit into like a major need for them going into the season, but certainly, you know, building up the future. So that was really interesting and surprising to me for sure, especially late in the first round with the Pearsall pick.
I think they made it like a priority to get speed on this offense, because they did get a lot of missed tackles, and maybe that comes back down to earth. Like McCaffrey led the league in missed tackles last year. Deebo Samuel led all wide receivers with 33. So maybe like to trying to figure out other avenues to kind of get offensive production, and they're probably looking around the league at Miami and other teams that just are speed, and maybe they can kind of copy that. Yeah,
and I also think like in terms of the wide receiver room outside of Ayuk, they don't really have great separators. Like, you know, Deebo, a big storyline in the Super Bowl was his inability to separate. Jennings has always just more been of a catch point guy. And, you know, Pearsall and Cowing to me really stood out with just how swift and fluid they are, getting open in different areas of the field. So I think that's also something they wanted to address.
What do you make of this offensive line?
Here's what I will say. This was actually what my question was going to be about. It seems like they've really doubled down on run blocking being all they care about, because they genuinely are one of the best run blocking units in football. And it just didn't really seem like Purdy was facing that much pressure until all of a sudden he's in the Super Bowl and the Chiefs are all over him in the fourth quarter and overtime. Like, I just didn't really think about that much as an issue all year, but it's definitely something that they could have addressed more. So I think I like the Pooney pick. I think that actually genuinely has a chance to be a serviceable starter right off the bat. But I mean, McKivitz at right tackle, I just don't have much faith in his pass protection. You know, outside of Trent, I'm a little concerned there. But then again, I can't lie to myself and say that like this was a problem all season for them. It really just kind of popped up to me in the Super Bowl.
They actually had the 8th highest pressure rate in the league allowed, but it like you said, it didn't look like it mattered.
It didn't,
right?
Yeah, they're so quick and in rhythm, and maybe that's a pro Purdy stat.
I like how you brought up Dominic Pooney, because he's winning that right guard job now. He's
Feliciano.
Yeah, he's getting a ton of love in training camp right now. They love him. He seems like kind of Kyle Shanahan's guy, so it looks like he's going to win that job. Trent Williams is a star. I assume they're going to get that thing figured out. And look, I'm not a guy that's going to come here and say, oh, he's going to be out of shape in training camp. Bite me. Like, he'll be fine. He's one of the best offensive linemen of our generation. I think he's still got a year or two of like star potential or star years left in the tank. So not worried about him. He led the league in pass block win rate. Now McKivitz is where it gets interesting. Allowed the 10th most pressures out of any offense, out of all the right tackles. Jake Brendel allowed the 8th most pressures out of any center in the league. So if there's a downfall coming, it's because they didn't address this.
Absolutely. And back to that Pearsall pick, you know, it's such a weird thing, because sometimes there are guys you really like in the draft and you really want to support them, and then they get drafted somewhere and you're like, do I really want to call this a good pick, or do I just really like the player? And I just think about how like Jackson Powers Johnson was on the board, and that just would have been a perfect upgrade at center, and they just really kind of doubled down on the fact that they're going to have elite run blockers, and they're going to just trust Purdy and the passing game weapons to take them from there.
Okay, so let's flip over the defense. What's your biggest question with this defense?
I think defensive coordinator, without a doubt. I think I don't know a whole lot about Nick Sorensen. I know that he was a major member of the Seahawks coaching staff in their peak defensively, and he's kind of been around. He's also been in special teams a little bit. It doesn't seem like the most inspiring resume to me. I'm not going to pretend to know a whole lot about him, but I do know that Steve Wilkes wasn't necessarily a bad defensive mind. He just didn't really elevate them to the heights that their personnel indicated. But I just keep thinking, like, giving a coordinator 2 years, especially when they're just getting thrown straight into the fire, it wasn't like he got upgraded from an assistant in San Francisco. I'm wondering if they're going to regret not, just giving him a little continuity at that spot for Shanahan.
Yeah, that's my question too with this team is, will this come back to bite them? So Nick Sorensen, that you bring it up, has one of the weirdest backgrounds to like lead to a defensive coordinator job I've kind of ever seen. So he, like you said, he was in the Seattle Seahawks kind of end of the Legion of Boom era. He was an assistant DBs coach there in 2016. And then he was a secondaries coach there from 2017 to 2020. But that 2017 year is when everyone started to move, right? Like that's when all the Earl Thomas, the Cam Chancellor, the Richard Sherman, that all kind of started to fall apart. And then he goes from 2020 out of Seattle to the Jags special teams coordinator. And then he goes to the San Francisco 49ers as a defensive assistant in 2022. And now he's a defensive coordinator of the Super Bowl NFC team. It's a baffling rise to fame. And I felt like if they were going to make a defensive coordinator change, it felt like they should have done a splash, right? Like, there were rumors out there that Kyle Shanahan was asking for Bill Belichick, and maybe that was his plan, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, that's what I'm theorizing that. That.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, it felt like this was like the third choice or the second choice that they had out of a bunch of calls, but they do have talent. Like, it's not like it's not like the cupboard's bare to work with. And I do think a lot of their problems last year were just missed tackles. Like they had a really bad run defense. Like that was their issue down the stretch. They were 26 in EPA per rush allowed, 24th in rush success rate. They went from 9.8 missed tackle percentage in 2022 to 15.4 in 2023. That's a big jump. Like they just couldn't get guys down on the ground. But run defense to me is something that they can figure out.
Absolutely. And I think I like the Malik Collins addition, actually, in the very middle of the defensive line. They're obviously getting Hufanga back. I have high hopes for Jair Brown in year 2. That is not my breakout player for them, though. It's a solid candidate, though. But honestly, I do think that they will figure it out in that regard.
Nick Korsek, I believe that's the defensive line coach. Chris Korsek, sorry. He's just so good at like just breeding defensive linemen. Like I think this will be like a teaching point this year, and I really think there's going to be some benefits to that with like Leonard Floyd even coming in from Buffalo. He had like 10 and a half sacks last year. Can he continue that run? And like they still have Fred Warner in the middle. You brought up Hufanga. Their secondary is still really good. Like I was kind of blown away at how good Charvarius Ward's been there when I was kind of digging up some stats. Like he was like a home run signing for them. Like John Lynch nailed this one. 6.5 yards average per target, 14th of the 61 corners out of at least 100 targets last year. Lenore is going to move inside. Renardo Green might be starting, the rookie corner that they drafted. So I like their defensive unit. Like to me, there's no reason this shouldn't be a top 10 defense.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a top 10 defense, where do you even go from here? Like, do you just say, all right, we're going to give our guy 2 years for once, or what do you even do at that point? So that'll be interesting to see. There could definitely be some interesting coaching staff dynamics and narratives as we go through the year.
Okay, who do you got as a breakout player?
Can I say a rookie? If not, I have a backup if I'm not allowed to say a rookie.
Go anywhere you want, dude.
Okay. I mean, I'm a big Renardo Green guy.
Okay.
So that was kind of my pick. I think he reminds me a bit of Ward, really, just his mantra as this press man corner. I really liked him at Florida State. I saw him take on Malik Neighbors. I just saw him lead one of the best secondaries in the country, really. So I think he can come in and absolutely be an immediate impact guy and, take that coverage unit to the next level.
I like it. I was a big Renardo Green guy throughout the draft, so I'm with you on that one. I'm finally thinking that Javon Kinlaw has a year. He's or sorry, not Javon Kinlaw. Sorry, not Javon Kinlaw. Malik Collins, sorry, has a year.
Sure.
I was thinking of it last year. I'm like, I have the wrong guys bringing in my head. I think finally Malik Collins, he was pretty good for that last year. He was actually better than Eric Armstead. If you take a look at some of the pressure numbers and whatnot, like he replaces him, and he had 6 more pressures than Eric Armstead, cheaper. So I think, like you brought up, Malik Collins is going to be solid for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been seeing him in Houston for years in the very worst days of the organization. I just thought he was one of their best guys up front. So I'm excited to see him alongside amazing talents.
And yeah, like I said, Chris Korsak this is what he does. He reclamation projects. And not even a reclamation project. He's already a good player. So we'll see if he can kind of get this defensive line up to par with what they should be, because Nick Bosa is obviously still there. Javon Hargrave's still there. So they got a lot of talent. All right. Prediction time. Where do you think the 49ers finish in the NFC West? And where do you think their season goes?
I think the 49ers are going to win the NFC West again. I think my gut says that they keep Ayuk, that their passing game is just unstoppable as always. I do have questions about, honestly, like, can Christian McCaffrey be there for them every game for 3 straight years now? That is one of my concerns, but the run blocking will be amazing, and we've seen, and I kind of like the running back room, honestly, even behind him. So I think that they're going to have one of the 3 best offenses in the league, and I think the defense will be top 10, and I think that they will be hosting a home playoff game, and I think that they will be right in that mix, middle of January, and we'll see what happens from there.
I really wanted to come into this exercise like thinking, am I going to do the 49ers are falling off a cliff take? But like when you dive into the numbers, it's just not going to happen, in my opinion. I have them winning the NFC
Super Bowl
West.
slump.
Yeah, like I just don't see it. Like they're returning so many guys. Like they didn't lose a ton of talent. Now, if Brandon Ayuk gets traded, this whole conversation it could be different, right?
Yes,
like this is if Brandon Ayuk stays. I don't know if the offense is going to be as great. I don't know if they're going to be the 8th best DVOA team again since 1979. They also had the 4th fewest adjusted games lost. They were very healthy last year. Hufanga was like their only big injury, so that stuff is finicky year to year. But I think they're the best team in this division. They're probably the best team in the conference. I think they're going to finish 1st or 2nd in the NFC. But there's a part of me in the back of my brain that really thinks it could happen. It could fall off.
It could. Debo, wear and tear with him, CMC. I mean, a couple guys go down there, and you are starting to wonder a little bit more, like, what are their guys going to do in space that makes them so unstoppable,
The vibes are just weird right now too, right? Like
it's very weird.
Out with the calf injury. Elijah Mitchell's been out with a hamstring injury in camp. The Ayuk stuff. Trent Williams isn't there. There's a little stink going on at training camp.
Yeah. It's strange. It is very strange, and like even the coaching staff, like we see that stuff get weird all the time.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. They finished 9-8 last year. They narrowly missed the playoffs. 16th in team DVOA, 12th in offensive DVOA, 28th in defensive DVOA. The Mike McDonald era begins in Seattle. Sir. I'm gonna pass the ball to you. With the offense, what's your biggest question?
My biggest question, I think this is honestly one of the biggest X factors in the league, is can their offensive line stay healthy? I mean, really and truly, because I'm a big fan of Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, but when they went down last year, the Seahawks went from one of the top teams in the NFC to really just a below average team fighting for their lives to even stay in the playoff race. So for me, that is just like the biggest, I really don't know what's going to happen there thing with this entire team, and one of my biggest types of questions in the entire league, really.
They need it to work, right? For this offense to work. Because Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator coming in from Washington, had the best offensive line in the country. Yeah, the best offensive line. Yeah, I think they won like the award, like the team award for the best offensive line. Yes. Wrong. Yeah, they did. So like, and Ryan Grubb's offenses, which we'll dive into now, like he loves to push the ball down the field. Washington's offense ranked 12th in yards per game back-to-back seasons. They love their mesh concept. They love their dynamic passing game down the field. They like to push the ball deep. deep. And if you don't have an offensive line that can block and keep your quarterback upright for longer than 3 seconds, sometimes like 2.5, it will get dicey.
Absolutely. And like, I mean, even on top of the bookend tackles, like they signed Connor Williams, who I think when he's on the field is really one of the best centers in the game. I thought he was an amazing run blocker for Miami, and then he had that season-ending injury. But I see so much potential with this offensive line if they can stay on the field, and I just don't know if that's a responsible bet. Like, that's my big conflict right now.
Yeah, like the right guard position is interesting to me. Like they have a Christian Hayes versus Anthony Bradford.
I'm a Haynes fan.
You are a Haynes guy. Okay.
I didn't
have a take on him, so I was hoping you had something on him. It's kind of like an underwhelming battle, but if you like him, I guess I can get behind it. Laken Tomlinson's like they're slotting in right now at left guard. He was like let go by the New York Jets, who had the worst offensive line in the league. Yeah. So like that's just like he was 27th last year in adjusted line yards when they ran behind him in New York. And this is a team that struggled to run the ball last year, get like open holes in the interior. Mm-hmm. So like, does that really fix it? And the tackles had health problems last year. Like Cross battled some injuries. Abe Lucas battled some injuries. They signed George Fant for some depth back there, but they need, like, this is the question of almost a division. Like, in my opinion, if this offensive line can stay healthy, I think this has the potential to be a top 5 offense in the league. Like, with all this is like when I was reading the depth chart, I was going, okay, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, Kenneth Walker, and Zach Charbonnet. That's as good as you're going to find in the league.
I mean, I'm fully on board with you. I mean, this is a take where if the Seahawks offense is great this year, it's going to be one of those. I wasn't wrong. I was just early, because last year going into the season after Geno broke out and I saw them picking up JSN, and I was a big believer in their tackles. I thought Abe Lucas had a great rookie year. I was like, man, I think the Seahawks are one of the sleepers for a top offense this year, and it just didn't align that way. But I think Ryan Grubb could be even more exciting than Shane Waldron in terms of how this personnel resembles what he did at Washington. I mean, he's got amazing vertical threats. I can totally see JSN being an amazing component of all the stuff he does in terms of his mesh concepts and better running backs than he had at Washington relative to the rest of the league. So I'm really excited for the potential here, especially after the Connor Williams signing.
I was so high on the Seahawks going into last year. I was like you. Like, I took them to win the division. I battled with my co-hosts on this podcast. Yeah, I did. I was all over it. Like, I was a big Geno guy, and then it just came crashing down on me. Yeah, exactly. It came crashing down on me. So that's why I'm a little hesitant this year. If you take a look at Geno Smith, like I think the decline was a little bit overstated, but he was really good in 2022. Like, he had a 50.2 success rate, which was 7th in the league, 72.3 completion percentage, which was 1st in the league. And then in 2023, it drops to 40.8% success rate and 68.4% completion. Like, it was a little, but that's enough to drop off to go from like a top 10 quarterback to like the 17th, 18th, right? And that's what kind of was the downfall. The team is, one, they just couldn't keep him upright, and two, he didn't look like the same version that he did in 2022.
Yeah, he just kind of got battered late in the season, and that happens sometimes. You know, have to pay attention when quarterbacks have great years. Just how much do you trust them to continue to stay upright? So that was a lesson I learned.
One more thing on this offense, I do think they need to be better in the red zone. They've been bottom 5 in the red zone in back-to-back years. It's something that they haven't been able to figure out, and I think a better running game will help that out, because they've been struggled to get the ball in between the tackles.
Absolutely. And I might have more to talk about a little later once we get past the defense.
Okay, let's talk about this defense, because this is one of the most interesting sides of the ball in the league, in my opinion.
Very.
My question is just, can Mike Macdonald get this defense back on track? Because something that I think was under noticed in the NFL is just how bad the Seahawks defense has been over the last 4 years. If you go from 2020 to 2023, so the last 4 years, the Seahawks defense ranks 27th in EPA per play on defense. They have been one of the worst units under Pete Carroll over the last 4 years. So, pass the ball to you. Do you think Mike Macdonald can kind of flip the fortunes of this team around?
I am going to fade Mike Macdonald defensively in year one, simply because I think he's going from Roquan Smith to like the worst linebackers in the league. And I think that was such a major component of how that defense emerged as really just the darling of the league in terms of units, is when they traded for Roquan. You know, he had his struggles early on in Baltimore. I remember when Tua threw 6 touchdowns on him and all those coverage busts, and then they bring Roquan in and he's just closing all these windows. It's just ridiculous. And now he's going to a defense with Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson at linebacker, 2 guys that, you know, AFC's teams willingly moved on from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very big part of how his scheme operates. So I am going to say that relative to what everyone thinks about him right now, he's going to disappoint a little bit defensively. But I will understand it because I understand what he's working with right now.
Yeah, I find him such a fascinating guy because he's almost like the Sean McVay now, or in the Kyle Shanahan of the defensive side of the ball. 5 teams are going to run his style defenses this year: the Titans, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Seahawks. And it's all about disguise. It's all about misdirection. Like, it's not like he does something specifically. Like, they do play a lot of cover 3. That's kind of like their base, I guess. But they just flip everything upside down. If you like, I was taking a look at some like blitz percentage numbers from last year. Like, are they going to blitz a lot? They're about league average. They blitz at like just over 20% rate, which is like a little below average. But they blitz the Bengals at a 12% rate in week 2. Then they blitz the Colts at a 53% rate in week 3. Like, they just, you don't know what's coming. It's very hard to game plan against. And I believe in this style defense. I believe in him. But I'm with you on just like the talent level. It's just not there compared to what he has in Baltimore. Like, I like Jaron Reed. Don't get me wrong. But like, he's not a Matabuke. I like Leonard Williams, and I like Uchenna Nwosu, who's like one of my favorite players in the league when healthy. But he's coming off an injury. Yeah, he's coming off an injury, but like, we'll see if he can get back to form. But like, the Ravens D line was so meshed well last year, it's just hard to imagine them to be able to get the same pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I like their front 4 and I like their back 4, but nothing feels the same to me at all compared to what he was working with in Baltimore. And I just think that those linebackers are really gonna expose the good, not great components of this defense outside of that.
They're going to rely heavily on Byron Murphy too, right? Like, who's apparently lighting up in camp and having a great camp, but always take that with a grain of salt from rookies. He's always the shiny toy. Mike McDonald did say he thinks Devin Witherspoon's the best player on the team, which is high praise. And I'm not against that. Like, he's pretty damn good. So like, and like Tarek Woolen is there. He kind of wasn't as good as he was in his rookie year, but he's still solid. Julian Love's not a bad player. It's not the Ravens' talent.
No, it's not. But I will say, in terms of talking about Witherspoon, he has some Kyle Hamilton particles in him, in my opinion. Yeah. I'm really excited to see what he does with him. You know, working out of the slot, blitzing, making plays in space against the run game, covering. I think that he is gonna have a very nice year. Very nice year.
All righty, breakout player on the Seattle Seahawks. Who you got?
Well, I almost just talked myself into the Witherspoon pick, but I feel like I can go with something more fun. I'm going to go with Zach Charbonnet.
Let's go.
I'm a big Charbonnet fan. I know you brought up that their red zone struggles. They need more between the tackles. I'm a big fan of the way Charbonnet runs. I also think that he did a good job in pass protection as a rookie. I was hoping for him to get a little more run, but it just didn't quite align that way. And now I do feel like they're going to really split it between him and Kenneth Walker. And, you know, Walker's taking a lot of the outside duties. He's going between the tackles. If this offense can just be better as a whole and the passing game can be more threatening as a whole downfield, take more guys out of the box, I can totally see Zach Charbonnet having a really nice year and kind of emerging as one of the better young running backs in the league.
It might be the best 1-2 punch in the NFL.
It's very fun. It's very fun. Yeah. And they complement so well. Like, we see a lot of teams like just pounding the same trade over and over. The Seahawks they're like the Gibbs and Montgomery up in Detroit. Like, I see some resemblance in that regard. So
I'm gonna go with Jackson Smith-Njigba. I know it's not like the most fun pick, but I think he's gonna. I I'll go crazy. Maybe he's the number one wide receiver at the end of this year. Like, I love DK Metcalf and I like Tyler Lockett, but I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is that good. And I think he just took a little time to get his feet under him. It's hard wide receiver room to go into as a rookie as well behind those two guys, right? Like, it's they're not game planning you to get targets, but I do think that Ryan Grubb is going to love him down the field. We saw what he could do towards his Ohio State tenure at the end there. So I'm all on board Jackson with Njigba. I've been eyeing him a lot of fantasy drafts. Like, he's going to be a target of mine. Okay. All right, prediction time, Nico. Where do you think the Seattle Seahawks land at the end of the 2024 season?
I really want to put them in second. Like, I'm really a fan of their process in terms of how they're building this team up in a lot of areas. I just don't think it's quite ironed out yet. So I'm going to say they go 9-8. I'm going to say they just barely get above 500. The offense is really fun. The defense has its moments, but ultimately there are going to be some top offenses that really attack them, and I don't love the offensive line health. So yeah, I'm going to say that they're right in that wild card race. I'll take them in third place.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier with your, like, going to fade the Mike McDonald defense. I'm going to do the same thing early because I was taking a look at the Ravens 2022 defense when Mike McDonald got there, and they struggled to begin his tenure there. They were 20th in success rate in the entire year. Mm-hmm. They were 22nd in team on defensive DVOA through the first 8 games. This is not an easy defense to learn. There's a lot of moving parts here. So I don't think he's going to step in and light the world on fire. I think they're going to look kind of similar to what they have the last 4 years for the first bit. Like, I will buy it next year. I'm not buying it this year. Absolutely. And I just think the offensive line is too big of an issue for me. As a trenches guy, I'm not falling for the Seahawks trap this year. Yes. I am going 7-10 or 8-9, and I think they're third in the division.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I do need to drop it a little bit, but I'm just thinking, they were 9-8 last year, right? And they got the slightly better offense. We'll see. I think 9 to 7 wins is a great range, though.
All right, well, we got 2 more teams left in the division, and we'll discuss them after this. The Double Doink podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Life is hard. It's especially hard when you don't have someone you can open up to. Not everyone is comfortable talking to their friends and family about their personal matters or anything that is bothering them on a day-to-day basis. Mental health is so important to continued success in this world. Therapy is a great way to regroup and get everything off your chest. Insert BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the largest online therapy service, 100% online. They will match you with a professional licensed therapist you can trust. You can talk with your therapist however you see fit, via text, phone call, or video chat. BetterHelp has successfully helped over 4 million people worldwide deal with their day-to-day mental health issues. Use the link in the podcast description to get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp. And we're back on the Double Doink podcast discussing the NFC West. Let's go to the Arizona Cardinals, Mr. Nico. Okay. Let's talk about a team that I'm pretty excited about this year. They were finished 4-13 last year, 4th in the NFC West, dead last, 21st in offensive DVOA, 32nd in defensive DVOA, 29th in team DVOA. My question on the offensive side of the ball is, can Kyler Murray get back to form and carry this offense? What do you think?
That's a little similar to mine. I'm a very big believer in Kyler's talent, and I'm going to say yes. I think that this is going to be probably Kyler Murray's, maybe not the highest peak we've ever seen from him. Like, we saw him the MVP frontrunner at times in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, but I think from week 1 to week 17, this is going to be the most consistent year we see Kyler Murray play. I think that he's not going to get worn down with health, and he's not going to get solved, because I really think that this is the best run game he's ever had, and I think that will really help to create balance and manage the amount of hits he's taking and what they're asking of him, and just really make it a very unpredictable attack. So I'm a big believer in Kyler this year. I think they got him exactly what he needed with Marvin Harrison Jr. We know he loves his contested targets. Like, you're going from the AJ Green days to Marvin Harrison Jr. That is pretty unbelievable. And Greg Dortch is a nice playmaker, and Trey McBride is quietly one of the probably top 5-ish best tight ends in the league after last season. He was amazing as a receiving weapon. I'm a big fan of Drew Petzing. I think he did an amazing job carving up like a top 10 run game last year. Who would have seen that coming, especially down the stretch. I know you caught a bit of a rough one there with the the Eagles game especially.
Oh my God. I actually have the stats for that game. Murray in the second half against Eagles, 13 of 14, 133 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Oh man.
Nico, it was I've watched a lot of bad Eagles football in my life. Been a fan for 20 years. I was watching with a buddy who's also a diehard Eagles fan on New Year's Eve, and I've never been more worn down at a game. It was the most disgusting performance I've ever seen a defense put on in their life. But back to the Kyler stuff. So last year in 2023, so I think it was 8 or 9 games, 2,043 total yards, 15 touchdowns, only 5 turnovers. It's pretty good. Like he flashed. He looked good, especially in that Eagles game. And you talk about the run offense, like it was elite. It wasn't just good. It was one of the best, if not the best in the NFL from when Kyler played to the end of the year. So when Kyler came back, I think it was week 10, second in EPA per rush during that 8-game stretch. They were amazing. Like James Conner resurrected his career. I think he's one of the most underrated backs in the league. And I'm all over. Good. Yeah, like I think this, and I think this carries over. I don't think this is something that's just gonna not be there this year. Like it's very hard to kind of keep certain schemes like working year to year. I get that, but I think they're gonna have a top 5, top 3 run offense again.
And man, if they can just marry that with an average passing game, we're talking about a good offense, like top 10 range. So yeah, I'm feeling good about Kyler. I think they're gonna ask less of him and still get the best out of him. So I think it's a very exciting time for a lot of us Kyler fans to feast.
So now, like you said, they dropped Marvin Harrison Jr. in this offense, which they haven't had a number 1 basically since D-Hop. D-Hop, and you can even go back to Larry Fitzgerald. Even like D-Hop didn't fully live up to expectations in Arizona. He was still really good, but I don't think he was as good as he was in Houston. And then Trey McBride, you brought up, he was awesome for them. 7+ targets. Yeah. Yes, he was like their number 1 guy. He was like a fantasy darling towards the end. He had that one insane game against the Ravens where he had like 10 catches for like 130 yards or something like that in that Ravens loss. You brought up Greg Dortch, who might be like the most talked about 4th receiver on the internet.
I know.
He's like, people just love him. He's such a funny player.
He's like the biggest crush in the league this offseason.
Yeah, everyone loves him. Michael Wilson's getting a lot of love, who flashed some potential last year. So they have Zay Jones on that roster. I'm bullish on his weapons. Like I think he's got something to cook here.
Yeah, and they were missing that really explosive game breaker, and they finally got it. And you've just seen how Petzing has gone the most out of a lot of these just really tough guys like McBride, Wilson, James Conner. Like I see so much toughness, and now they can add a little bit of flair on top of that. It's going to be really fun.
The O-line has a little bit of questions in the interior. Like it's just about average. Will Hernandez actually played okay last year. One of the most frustrating offensive linemen in the league. Yeah,
surprise.
Do you know that Will Hernandez has a GQ interview about like his money? It's a really funny listen. I recommend you go watch that. I don't know how Will Hernandez landed on a GQ interview, but he did. He played well. He was like top 15 in run block win rate. Evan Brown and Isaiah Adams, Canadian Ajax, Ontario boy. Isaiah Adams, got to give him a shout out here. They're battling for the left guard job. We'll see if Froholt can still. He was okay last year. See if he can play well. So the interior's like a little bit shaky. It depends. We'll see how it goes. But I like their tackles. I think Paris Johnson has a ton of potential. Yes. I like the Jonah Williams addition. So I think Kyler's outsides are protected well.
Yeah, it's really hard to find issues here. I mean, with the run game last year, I'm not fixating too much on what it looks like in the interior offensive line, just because I know. Like, they've been able to scheme up a really efficient run game, and Kyler's obviously amazing when the pocket breaks down. So it's really hard to talk me out of this attack. It's I don't think anyone's going to do it.
All right, let's talk about this defense because it's a different story. So, like I said, the top 32nd in defensive DVOA. It was the worst in the defense in the NFL, and I don't think it was close. They finished bottom 5 in run stop and pass rush win rate, which is pretty hard to do as a defense. You're not good at both. I don't know what Gannon was. I felt like Gannon was just trying things last year. Like it felt like it was just like he knew it was a lost year. Like they ran
stuff at a wall, the most see if it sticks.
Yes. Exactly, yeah. Like he knew his talent wasn't there, so he was just kind of playing around. He had the most 3-man pass rushes in the league. They played a ton a base defense as well on early downs. I don't really know what Gannon was doing. I'm not a big Jonathan Gannon guy as an Eagles fan.
Understandable.
I will never forgive him for the Super Bowl. However, having said that, I do think he can be a quality head coach. I just don't think he's like this defensive mastermind in the league.
He's not McDonald for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think all the 3-man rushes, and I mean, you're looking at who's rushing the passer here, and you're looking at how they just lost BJ Ojulari, probably their most promising pass rusher going into the season. I'm like, how is this gonna work?
Yeah.
Where's it coming from? Where's the resistance coming from? And like, is he gonna? Because that is a lot of what Jonathan Gannon likes to do. He likes to ask the most of his defensive lines from what we've seen, and it's just I'm really questioning the pass rushing juice here.
Yeah, in 2022, when he had success in Philly, it was a lot of my guy's going to beat your guy up front. Like Hassan Reddick was an absolute monster. That year, like one of the most underrated years as a defensive lineman I've seen in a while. I thought he should have got Defensive Player of the Year love. Like they just had a bunch of guys that could win one-on-one, and this defense doesn't. Like Zaven Collins is now transitioning from inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker to an edge rusher. They brought in Bilal Nichols, who was awful in Las Vegas. It was one of the worst free agent signings of the last couple of years. Justin Jones they brought in, who was like below average. They just needed guys, I guess, in the interior. They needed to do something, and like this was their plan. I don't really love it. Darius Robinson has some juice. Like that'll be an exciting guy. You see, he has a lot of potential, but again, he's a rookie. So how much can you rely on him? Without BJ Ojulari, like they were really banking on him to take a step up and be a double-digit sack guy. And now without him, like you said, I don't know where the pressure's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I kept looking at this defensive line, and going into the offseason, I was like, yeah, they're going to walk out of this offseason with Josh Sweat, Christian Wilkins, or Hassan Reddick, and none of that happened. And now we're just and now BJ Ojulari's hurt. And now I'm just like, yeah, I'm a really big fan of this franchise's process so far. But defensively,
it's still bad. Like Sean
really
Murphy,
bad.
Like the secondary is like probably maybe one of the worst in the league. I like Max Bell was one of my favorite players in this draft. He's an absolute dog, but again, he's a rookie. Sean Murphy Bunting was supposed to resurrect his career in Tennessee. That did not happen. He's on a 1-year deal. They had Budda Baker, but he's getting up there in age. Is he going to be his former self? Kaiser White is like the leader of this defense. Like they're going to need rookies, and they're going to need guys to step up here, or else like this on paper could be one of the worst defenses.
I think it's them and LA, like
another team we're going to talk about for sure. Yeah.
Oh no, I was talking about the Chargers.
You're talking about the Chargers? Oh, I'm talking about the Rams, man.
I'm thinking talent. I'm thinking talent. It's hard. I don't think I can find a worse defense on paper at the moment. I mean, I've still got to study some other teams a lot more, but wow, they are going to need one of these corners to. They're going to need one of these guys to be really feisty. Really feisty.
Mm-hmm. All right, give me your breakout player for the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, I think my big question for the defense was like, is Budda Baker still their best piece? And I feel like someone has to emerge. And so I will go with the guy. I would have loved to pick Ojulari. I will go with the next guy that I think has shown the most upswing in the last season and just got a new contract. I will take Zaven Collins to be my breakout player just because I feel like someone has to break out on this defense, and I do think that he's done a better job as a run defender. He's not super exploitable right now. They found that sweet spot in terms of how he should be used, and like someone has to rush the passer. I like Gardick a little bit too, but I do think that he can be their best pass rusher out on the edge, and I'll take that one. I will stray away from some of the easy picks on offense, and I will say that someone has to be good. I will bet on Zaven Collins to be a genuinely good player on this defense.
Hey, there is a case study of inside linebacker turning edge rusher to shine right there. Hassan Reddick did it right. This is where he resurrected his career. It was funny. I was working the news desk the day BJ Ojulari got hurt, and then they signed Zaven Collins to extension like 4 hours later. It was just like they were like, "All right, here's the money, man. We're paying you. We need you this bad. Like here's what can we do to motivate you? Here's some cash." So he's gonna have to be a 7 to 10 sack guy for them if they want to succeed. I am going. I really didn't want to do this, but I'm going Kyler Murray. Fuck it, Nico. I'm taking Kyler Murray as my breakout player. I have Kyler Murray future bets as MVP. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
I think this is year. I'm going back to where you said at the beginning of this team exercise. I think this is gonna be the best version of Kyler Murray we're gonna see. I think this is his breakout year. I think the Arizona offense is really damn good this year. I love Drew Petzing. I think he's like I talked about on the AFC East episode where I think Joe Brady could become like the shiny toy for teams next year looking to hire an offensive head coach. I don't get why Drew Petzing didn't get head coaching interviews this run.
Absolutely.
He's great. Drew Petzing was like very creative. Like it was one of the most fun offenses in the league to watch.
And that is one of my biggest credits I have to give to Gannon. He pulled that one out of a hat, and it just gives me a lot of faith that that if Petzing does leave in the next year or two, like I think that's a really promising way to start off your coaching staff building resume. So,
all right, my crazy take of the 2024 NFL season, Nico.
Oh boy,
if I'm crazy here, I have the Arizona Cardinals finishing second in the NFC West, and I have them making the playoffs. How nuts am I?
Okay. Wow. I mean, listen, if it comes down to just how good you think this offense is going to be after we've talked about the defense and torn it to shreds, if Kyler Murray is in the MVP conversation and they've got this amazing run game and they can control time of possession and keep their defense off the field a little more, like they are one of the teams I could sort of trust to mitigate the talent on the other end in that regard. I see where you're getting at there, so yeah.
All right, good. You didn't completely shut me down here because this is a take I've been floating for the last month. Like I've got it. I got it. I was on ESPN radio in Arizona last week, and I threw it out there just to see what the radio host would say. And of course, they loved it. It was ESPN Arizona, but I haven't put it out into the world yet. So there it is. They're my sleeper team of the year, Nico. I think they're going to shock the world. Top 5 offense, in my opinion. I think their defense is going to be just good enough where they can make the playoffs. It kind of reminds me when I was doing the research for the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams finished 7th in offensive DVOA last year. Yeah, the Rams finished 7th in offensive DVOA last year and 22nd in defensive DVOA. I think that's possible. I think that's more than possible for this Cardinals team.
Absolutely, especially if you think that Nick Rallis can be one of the better up and coming defensive coordinators. I thought Raheem Morris did an amazing job in LA last year and just sort of got a lot out of a very uninspiring back unit and very uninspiring pass rush outside of Donald. Like, you never know. Like, Monty Ossenfort, a couple of these picks could hit. You know, Darius Robinson could be the next upcoming star in the interior defensive line. So,
all right, let's finish it off. One more team, the Los Angeles Rams. They lost in the wild card round. One of the more exciting football games of the year was that Lions-Rams wild card game. They finished 7th in offensive DVOA, 22nd in defensive DVOA, 17th in total DVOA. Hit me with your biggest question for the Los Angeles Rams offense.
So I've heard a lot of buzz about, Cooper Kupp. He's back and he's healthy. And I think, honestly, my question here is how is it going to work between him and Puka? Is Puka only going to get better from here, or is he only going to get a little more down to earth from here? So I'm kind of wondering, is Kupp going to go back to being the guy? I mean, him and Stafford in 2021, some of the best wide receiver quarterback chemistry I've ever seen in my life. I mean, really and truly. So I'm really wondering who's the guy in LA right now.
You brought up Kupp, and this is a conversation I wanted to have because his efficiency stats for the team last year were kind of off a cliff. Like, he had a 49.5% success rate last year, which was below average, 62.1% catch rate, which was both of those are career lows for him. He was injured throughout the year. He had some injury issues. Was that lingering on towards the end of the year is a question. He has come out and said this is the healthiest he's been since the 2021 breakout campaign. So can he kind of get back to that form is huge, because if they have a compliment to Puka, I don't think Puka's going anywhere. I think he's him. I think he's it. So if Kupp can rise to the occasion and kind of have another couple good years, this offense could be really, really damn good.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about top 5 wide receiver duo in the league upside. Absolutely. And I definitely do think that Puka is legit. I'm just talking more of a production standpoint. I think Puka more and more throughout the year did stuff just outside of what was being schemed up to him, and made some amazing catches and showed what he can do after the catch. And, the Lions game was just almost the peak of it all for me. I mean, I'm like, look at this guy. So yeah, I think, and I'm a big Stafford guy. I think arguably last year, just regular season, because he had an insane playoff run in 2021. I think that's the best he's ever been. I think he had the best regular season ever. And behind an offensive line that I wasn't really expecting too much of, and throwing to guys I wasn't expecting too much of. So now we know a little more about what we're working with, and it's really hard to see this offense not being extremely fun.
Yeah, McVay has a great depth chart for what he wants to run. Like, it's kind of built for his offense. Like, they run 11 personnel 95% of the time, the highest rate in the NFL by a wide margin. They just put 3 wide receivers out there and go, and it's because it works so well because they can block. You said like Puka was doing stuff outside what people don't know about. He's such a good damn blocker. He's like almost looks like a tight end out there sometimes. Like, it just, they attack nickel defense because when you play 11 personnel, teams have to, of course, match up and play nickel, and they're not scared of running into it. Like, they'll run you over in that nickel defense. Like, their offense was so damn good down the stretch last year from week 10 to 18, 4th in EPA per play, 3rd in drop back success rate, and 4th in EPA per rush. Like, they were dominant. Now, I don't like, it's hard to, like, everyone will go, oh, they were so good the last 8 games of the year. That's obviously going to translate into this year. Like, it's not how the NFL works. Like, just because you were bad the last 8 games of the year doesn't mean you're going to be bad again. Just because you were good the last 8 games of the year doesn't mean you're going to be good again. So we'll see. I have questions about the health on the offense is kind of my biggest concern. And, yeah, like Rob, I was going to say Rob Havenstein. Yeah, Rob Havenstein is already battling some injuries in training camp. I'm worried about Matthew Stafford. He's on 36. He's getting up there. I'm worried about their tackle situation. Like, their interior, the offensive line is some of the best. Like you brought up, their O-line was the biggest surprise of the year. Like, Kevin Dotson hit. Like, Steve Avila was awesome. So I'm not as high as I thought I was going to be on this offense coming into this exercise, just because I have some health issues.
Absolutely. And even like Jonah Jackson, a kind of fun addition from Detroit, he's been battling some injuries. So yeah, I can totally understand that. I think maybe down to earth year for Kevin Dotson, not out of the possibility considering what he did for so long before he got into LA. And Sean McVay really just like transformed his rushing scheme to cater to that skill set. So
he was how he got this contract after Pittsburgh just let him walk. He just completely resurrected Kevin Dotson's career. McVay, it's special. Do you have anything else on the offense before we move over to this defense?
Not particularly, no.
All right, let's talk about this defense. And we just talked about the Arizona Cardinals defense. I see a lot of similar stuff here. My question is, how much will they miss Aaron Donald? Do you think how big do you think this loss is, Nico? Because this is the question for you.
It's a massive loss. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. You can like Kobe Turner all you want. It doesn't even come close. I will say this. I think the Rams, this defense is going to be a very interesting case study as to, like, would you rather have a defense with a lot of guys you feel good about, or would you rather have a defense with a game breaker and a lot of guys you don't feel good about at all? So, because I do think that, like, a lot of their additions, I like the Cam Curl addition. I think Verse is definitely going to be a nice edge right away. I like a lot of their corners. I think Trey White definitely have a resurrection year. A little fishy, of course, but I do like Darius Williams. He was great in Jacksonville last year. Basically just got dumped because of the scheme change, and now he's back into a scheme that fits him. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be the same. I think that this Rams team is looking definitely closer to the bottom of the league. And it's hard when you don't have to scheme for Aaron Donald. I think offensive coordinators.
It's like the best defensive player of the generation is now on the team. So
no biggie.
Like, where do you go from? Yeah, exactly. No biggie. You brought up Fisk and Verse. They are relying heavily on the FSU boys this year.
They really liked Fisk. We can certainly say that. They are massive fans of Fisk.
That might have been one of the craziest not talked about trades ever. They gave up a future second round pick and a 155th overall pick to move up 13 spots in the second round to get him. That is insane compensation for this guy. They said they love him in camp right now. Like, McVay said they would have done anything to go get him. Like, they were really, really wanted to pair these two together. Now, one of my biggest draft pet peeves is when you fall in love with a guy and you think you'll do anything to get him. I think it's the biggest red flag in every draft, right? Like, don't trust your scouting so much. You're not smarter than everyone else. Like, I think it was a risky pick. Could he be good? Maybe, but he's definitely not going to be Aaron Donald, I don't think. And you gave up a future second round pick to get him. I wasn't the biggest Jared Verse guy, to be honest, but we'll see how he pans out for them. And I have questions about the secondary. Like, they're relying on Tre'Davious White right now. How healthy is he going to be? He's getting up there in age. I like Cam Curl, but outside of him, the secondary's got John Johnson, who has been a suitcase. He hasn't been able to kind of find a home.
I like that.
Yeah, like they already lost. Who was the corner that they just lost? To injury.
Kendrick, Darion Kendrick.
Yeah, Darion Kendrick. Like, they've already had injuries there, so on paper, I think you could make the argument that the two worst defenses in the league are in this division.
Okay. I think I'm a little more of like a bottom 5 outside of the bottom 5, and you're thinking bottom 5 absolutely. But whatever way you slice it, this defense is not going to be good.
So my breakout player for them is Cam Kitchens, because I was obsessed with him. He was one of my draft crushes. I wrote about him at the Score for top 10 kind of under the radar guys to watch out for, like the vocal leader of Miami's defense. He didn't have a penalty for the last 2 years. He has a ton of reps in college and a lot of safeties instincts. Like, he's got that. He doesn't flash the athletic ability, but I think they got something in Kitchens. So I think he's going to end up starting for them. And I think he's going to be kind of one of their better players on the defense towards the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Kitchens was awesome at Miami last year, and in another interesting case study, like they totally threw the combine out into the garbage, and they said this guy can play.
Yeah, that's what they're known for. The Rams don't give a fuck about
Kyron Williams.
Yeah,
we've seen this movie before, so yeah. I'm gonna go and see. This is where I'm kind of getting at. I think they're gonna be a little more fine than you think, at least in the secondary. I'm gonna take Quentin Lake. Their nickel. This is a very. I'm not here to tell you that he's gonna be awesome, but I am here to tell you that he is going to be a solid starter. He kind of got thrown into the fire more and more late in the season at nickel. They took Rust Yeast out more and more. That's an interesting name, by the way. And I just thought that he was a lot of the numbers. He was very formidable in coverage. I think they sort of found a solution there. And I think he's just going to kind of evolve into an above average nickel guy. So not a lot to choose from, honestly. It was a tough exercise with this one. This was my hardest one.
The breakout player for the Rams was the hardest for me as well.
I'm just grasping at straws, but
yeah, like you said, I didn't want to pick a rookie potentially for this team, but we're going for it. Okay, I'm going to start with the prediction here.
Okay,
I think this team's finishing 4th in the NFC West. It's one of my other hotter takes. I didn't have hot takes on the AFC East pod. I'm coming at you with some hot ones with the Cardinals and the Rams.
You sure are.
I am worried about the health of this team, like I said at the top. I don't trust their tackles. Stafford's 36. He's missed 8+ games in 2 of the last 5 years. He was very healthy last year. You're banking on a 36-year-old quarterback to replicate that. I don't trust Cooper Kupp to stay healthy. I think he's on the wrong side of 30. I think they're going to finish like 7-10. And they're going to battle some injuries this year. I think the defense is brutal. And the one thing that no one is talking about the Rams is Raheem Morris isn't there anymore. Like he elevated that defense to 22nd in DVOA when they had a bottom 3 roster. He was so good with the rookies. Chris Shula is the defensive coordinator of the Rams, and everyone knows him because he's Don Shula's grandson. Now, like, I don't want to poo-poo the guy too much. We don't know him too well, but like,
I see what you're getting at. Yeah,
loss is so underrated in like just for any team this year, and I think the Rams are looking at either the bottom 3 worst defenses or bottom 5. So I am selling Rams stock this year.
Okay, I think you have swayed me actually a little bit. I am going to say that I'm going to actually put the Seahawks above the Rams on second thought.
You're buying the Seahawks again. It's a tough one, man.
I want to buy the Seahawks. I want to buy the Seahawks, and I'm just not as fired up about the Rams. So screw it. I'll say the Rams finish in 3rd place. I'll say they go 8-9. And I think that can be compensated by the fact that I'm just a little lower on the Cardinals and higher on the Seahawks. So I think it lines up fair enough.
Do you think the Seahawks? I think there's two teams making the playoffs from this division. I have the Cardinals and the 49ers. You have two. Do you have the Seahawks making the playoffs?
I don't think so. No,
I
think that the NFC is just
loaded.
It's loaded this year. It's like, do I really like Seattle more than Dallas at the moment? I don't think so. Do I really like them more than Chicago at the moment? I don't think so. But we'll see. I think it could very well happen. I personally will not give them that expectation yet, because I do think that's a lot for Mike McDonald in year one.
Yeah, I have the NFC North coming up next, and I'm gonna pick 3 from that division. So like not many
playoff spots to
go around. Exactly, yeah. So, and I already have the Cardinals sneaking in there, so I couldn't pick a third one.
Oh boy!
All right. So Nico, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Absolutely.
Before we go, we'll plug in where the listeners can follow you on social media. If you have any work coming out, plug away.
Sure. So, I mean, my main platform I'm most known on is TikTok. It's just Elite Takes, no underscores at all. On Twitter, it is Elite Takes _. On YouTube, it's Elite Takes, and on Instagram, it's Elite Takes _. But yeah, mainly TikTok and Twitter for me, or X. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm gonna be pumping stuff out, and we'll see about. I'm hoping to make a lot of Kyler Murray content this year.
Oh yeah,
I would love that.
600K on TikTok now? Like, you are killing it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're the man, Nico. Thanks so much for doing this. Enjoy your first week at Texas A&M when you move in, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.